Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and welcome everybody to our workshop. Thank you for being here. And just as it was introduced, we're connecting to you from Poland today. We're getting our first snowfall today, so it's a kind of an exciting day here. Um, but we are even more excited with Ms. Maryla Sokolowska to share with you a few techniques that would be considered cognitive behavioral, to give you a few more tools to use in your toolbox to combat stress, to deal with stress, to cope with stress. And because predictability is one way to reduce stress, we will start with an agenda. So we will start with a short survey. We just want to check in with everyone and make sure that we all stay engaged. Then I will introduce the cognitive behavioral techniques, the cognitive behavioral theory, what it means, and how you can apply it in your day-to-day life. Then we'll take about a 10-minute break. We're estimating it at around 1:20 p.m. And then Ms. Maryla Sokolowska will lead us into the introduction to self-compassion and ways to silence that inner critic that we often have. And so after each of those two segments, we will have time for questions. Because they are introducing slightly different techniques, we wanted to make sure that you can ask the questions as you're thinking about them fresh as well. We do have a few short exercises. Because the topics that we're talking about today are pretty personal, we will not be breaking up into small groups. Instead, you'll be doing the exercises individually. So for those of you who feel comfortable and who can, we invite you to do those exercises with us. And obviously, if you have any questions, just as was mentioned before, please write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand as well. Okay, so let's start with the survey. If you can, on your mobile phone, please type in this website, www.menti.com, and type in this code. This is the code to the survey we've created. It's not really a very complicated survey. We're asking you about what's stressful to you, and to give us 3 examples of what's stressful to you right now. And oh, thank you for sharing the link. Lovely. So in the chat you see we have the link to the survey, and make sure that you're writing the examples in English, because we're trying to make sure that we can combine the results. So there we go. Here the results are coming in, so you can see the word cloud getting populated by different stressors. We have work in the center, pretty big. Health is up there as well. Deadlines, time pressure, grades of your kids, yeah. Time, so lots of lack of time. Illness, health, complexity of stimuli, excessive workloads, yeah, money. Work, money, time. So the stressors are getting that are answered the most are the kind of the biggest letters as well, are the biggest words, and they tend to be in the center. So we have work, money, health, lack of time, responsibility, bureaucracy. Oh yeah. Organization, own thoughts. Well, you're in the right place. For those of you who kind of find their own thoughts stressful, hopefully we can work on that as well. Pressure. Yeah, so this is kind of our common humanity that we can see here. There is a lot of commonalities that we have, even for those of us who didn't, I think work comes up a lot in kind of different in different words. Money comes up, health or illness, family, different family matters, little time for yourself, um, work pressure, lots of pressure, lack of time. So thank you so much for this. We'll take a look at this one more time at the end to make sure that we didn't miss anybody. Right now we have 138 responses. So I have a 7-year-old son, and he loves to listen to podcasts, and he's always looking for something new to listen to. And he recently found this little gem. It's called the Cat in the Hat Cast, and it's based on Dr. Seuss' Cat in the Hat character. And even though it's for kids, it's great for adults too. And I always enjoy listening to it. And one of the episodes I was listening with my son, I heard a quote that really summarizes what cognitive behavioral theory or CBT is all about. And the quote is, "What better way to change one's thinking than to change one's point of view?" And in CBT, that's what we do. We try to change people, the way that we look at things, the way that we interpret things, by slightly changing how we look at them, by slightly changing the point of view, by challenging the beliefs that we automatically have about certain things. So for the and we do it in many different ways. So for the purposes of this workshop, the essence of CBT, for the purposes of this workshop, we chose two broad techniques, two broad areas. One of them is called cognitive restructuring. And I will talk a little bit about what that means. It's not a very friendly term. Another one is self-compassion. And so that will be the second part of the workshop. As I mentioned before, there are many other techniques, even under the cognitive behavioral theory umbrella. So these are two ways. Cognitive restructuring has to do with how we, kind of challenging how we think about certain things and maybe coming up with a different way to think about it. Self-compassion have to do with changing a little bit our relationship to our thoughts and our experiences. However, there are many other ways as well. And at the end of the presentation, we do have several resources that you can check out in your free time as well as recommendations, and still within the cognitive behavioral orientation. Okay, so as I mentioned, not a very friendly term, doesn't sound very inviting. So let's break down what we mean by cognitive restructuring. And to do that, I invite you to do another exercise. And for this one, I will invite you or ask you to type your answers in the chat. Okay, so imagine that you are at a party and a friend introduces you to Alex. Alex is not looking at you. During a short exchange, he keeps staring at something behind your back. Okay, so this is the situation. Now, let's assume that the first thought that you have is, Alex is rude. He is ignoring me, which I find insulting. Okay, so that's the first thought that pops into your head. What do you think will be the emotion associated with it out of those four? We have irritation, sadness, anxiety, and care and concern. What is the most likely emotion in response to this thought? I'm seeing some irritation. Absolutely. So there's a consensus on irritation. And it makes sense, right? Because when we assume that somebody is ignoring us, that they don't pay attention to us, we feel irritated. There's also, could be sadness, right? I saw some sadness there. And sadness could also appear. And also, I assume that it might be a secondary emotion, potentially. So let me take you to the next example. Same situation. You're at a party. Alex is still not looking at you. He's looking behind you. But the thought is, Alex is not interested in me. I'm boring. What is what's the emotion that is most likely to show up there? Anxiety, sadness. So I'm seeing some mix between anxiety, sadness, there's some irritation. Yeah. So when I have this kind of thought or this assumption that I am boring, like there's something wrong with me, then then potentially the first emotion is sorry. Somebody said I am a man and I'm not able to provide an emotion to this, but I appreciate that. Well, we have some emotion words, so you can still give it a shot. So for this one, I would assume that potentially the first emotion is sadness, as this person kind of makes an attribution that there is something wrong with them, that they are the ones who are making Alex act this way, and it's something that's wrong with them. But potentially anxiety, potentially other emotions also show up. A lot of the times we don't just have one. Okay, last time. Same situation, but now the thought is, I think Alex is shy. He was probably too embarrassed to make eye contact. What might be a possible emotion there? Mm-hmm. Right. Care and concern. Yeah, right. So here we are kind of putting ourselves maybe a little bit in Alex's shoes, right? Maybe using some empathy, or maybe just drawing on some of our previous experiences with people who don't make eye contact and know, or maybe maybe we used to be that person that didn't make eye contact because they were too nervous. And so we make that attribution about Alex as well. And that elicits a different emotion. So thank you so much for all your answers. Let's sit with this for a minute, right? We had the same situation, three different emotions depending on the interpretation, or more than three different emotions, just generally different emotions depending on how we thought about the situation, how we interpreted the situation. And we're all different. So that explains why different people react differently to the same situation. And that really is the gist of the cognitive behavioral theory. So this here is the ABC model. This is the kind of the model that we typically use in cognitive behavioral therapy. Something that happens, the situation, that's the A, the activating event. And it usually activates some kind of interpretation. So that's the B for beliefs and thoughts. And then there's a consequence, and the consequence is a little more complex, right? That's C, consequence, because it's not just emotions. There's going to be emotions, but there's also going to be some physiological reactions, how our body reacts in that situation, and some behaviors, what we want to do or what we actually do in response to that particular emotions. And each of these parts, these B's and C's, all the like each of these parts here that interact with each other, they can be modified, they can be adjusted, and so we can kind of adjust some of our beliefs and thoughts, potentially change our behaviors, change how our body feels, potentially, and that will lead to changing the emotions. However, we first have to learn to recognize them, right? We have to learn to observe them and see what they actually are. So so one way to do it is to start writing them down. So let's go back to that situation, right? The situation with Alex. And somebody wrote, so in this situation, Alex is a man. However, it could be a woman. Alex is one of, it's a kind of a unisex name, so it could definitely be a woman. So, so if I were to write down the situation and break it down into the ABC model, it would look something like this. So at a party last Saturday, new guy introduced to me. He was not looking at me during the conversation. So my belief, one of the beliefs, right, that showed up was that Alex is rude. He is ignoring me. This is really insulting. And we already know that this belief, we kind of assume that this belief was most likely associated with some irritation, right? So if if I'm feeling irritated, what might I feel on my body? Like when you think irritated, or when you think back to the last time you felt irritated, how did your body response change? Heart accelerates, absolutely. Palpitations. Higher pulse. Yeah, the blood starts pumping faster. Body tension. Yes, speaking. Great. These are all really good observations about how our body reacts to irritation. And then in response to that, heat in the head. Yeah, the blood rushing into your head. And in response to that emotion and that physiological reaction, we might react in a certain way, right? What might be a behavior that follows in this situation, hypothetically? I mean, how might someone react when they're feeling irritated because someone is ignoring them? Walk away. Yeah, absolutely. Be rude back. Yes. Ignore him too. Yeah. Well, you're spot on. So that's kind of what I assumed as well. So in this model, look for cancer. And keeping it inside. Yes, so that goes back to the urges, right? So the behavior is something that we do, or perhaps it's something that we want to do. So in this case, my behavior, so irritation was associated with muscle. This is a hypothetical example, by the way. So I say I, but really this is not necessarily something that happened. But in this example, the physiological reaction was muscle tension and heart rate increased. And the behavioral reaction was that I wanted to be rude to Alex, right? That was the urge. But instead, I ended the conversation quickly and, let's say, walked away. So these are, so you're absolutely right. You had the right kind of behavioral reactions to irritation. Okay, so then let's work with that other thought. Alex is shy. He's probably too embarrassed to make eye contact. And the most likely emotion there was care and concern. What might be the physiological reactions there, if any? And what might be the behaviors in response? Smile. Right. Because when we smile, we communicate something, right? We communicate openness, friendliness. Moving a bit closer. I like that. Yeah. Right. So lots of body language there. Say something funny. So all of these are really kind of really great behavioral responses to that emotion of care and concern about somebody who might be struggling in the moment, right? So catch attention to So I kind of said potentially making small talk with Alex, complimenting Alex would be a behavior in response to that emotion. But I think smiling, that's a behavioral response as well. And I think that those are really good ones as well. and most likely no pronounced changes in kind of how we respond physiologically between care and concern. Look away, respecting his needs. That may also be, that's also a behavioral response, right? So kind of giving him some space. Okay. So, depends on the culture. Okay, right. Yeah, so we're and that's another interesting point, right? That this is that a lot of this will be or some of our especially the behavioral reactions or the interpretations will be culture specific for sure. And so so that's a great point. Okay. All right, so why don't we put this into practice? So if you have a pen and paper, I think that may be the easiest way to do it. But you can also do it on the computer if you'd like. So what I would like you to do is think about your past week. Okay, and think about kind of a moderately stressful experience that you had. Nothing that was extremely stressful, but something that maybe kind of activated you a little bit, maybe irritated you, or you notice that physiological reaction, right? When we are feeling stressed, we also feel tension, we also feel heart rate increasing, and so on. And so pick one event like that, moderately stressful event. And then see if you can break it down into this ABC model. So first, for A, write down briefly, right? Who was involved, what happened, where and when it happened. Okay, about what happened, it's again kind of a short thing, fairly objective without too many interpretations. For beliefs, think about try to look back and think about what did you tell yourself or what images popped into your head. Okay, and then break down that consequence. Did you have any physiological reactions in response to it? What emotions might you have been feeling? And what did you do or what did you feel like doing, right? And so I'll send you a screenshot of this in the chat because I also want to bring your attention to another issue, the issue of emotions. Somebody mentioned I don't think, I don't really have words for emotions or something along those lines, right? Or I'm not, I can't name emotions. And it's true, sometimes it's hard for us to name emotions. We don't communicate usually talking about how we feel. Even when we say I feel, somebody might say like I feel like screaming, right? That's not really an emotion, that's a behavior, right? I feel like doing something. Or I feel like I'm going to fail at this, right? That's not an emotion either. That's a thought, that's an interpretation. So emotions are usually like one word. It's an emotion, an adjective typically, right? So here is a wheel of emotions, and there are all kinds of different versions of this wheel online. I don't think there's like one master version. This is just one that I downloaded from this website here. But feel free to refer to it as you're working through this example. So basically, when we think about this cognitive behavioral model, so cognitive means relating to thoughts, right? Related to thinking. And according to this ABC model, our emotions usually make sense, right? Because they are a response to, something that we have experienced, right? Some kind of interpretation of what we've experienced. So they usually make sense, but sometimes they are a response to an interpretation that is not 100% accurate. And so what that means is that the emotion and or the behavior associated with the emotion will be inadequate to the situation. right? Has it ever happened that you felt a lot of stress about something that maybe in hindsight, when you look back at it, wasn't as stressful? I have to answer, but think about it, right? Sometimes it happens. I mean, I feel like it happens to many people. Yeah. That we feel a certain emotion, and it makes sense because of kind of how we interpret the situation that is going to happen, for example, right? What we think about the situation that is going to happen, then turns out that maybe it wasn't so bad. And so how does that happen? So another exercise, another private exercise. We won't be sharing this one either. Okay, here's a picture. Write down your first interpretation. First thought that pops into your head. Okay, what's going on in this picture? Not in the chat, on your pieces of paper. Okay, so we're not sharing this. This is private. So about 50-50, we had about 15 people who said primarily negative, and then again another 14 or so who said primarily positive. And again, it's very interesting. And I think it also, so I will say that I did that exercise with my students this week as well. And those were primarily Polish students. And I would say that about 80 to 90% of the class said that their interpretation was about negative, and my interpretation is primarily negative as well. So I'm wondering, and I think it kind of shows how we form certain beliefs. So this first interpretation, this first thing that pops into our head is called automatic thought. Okay, it's this one here, according to the cognitive behavioral model. And those automatic thoughts don't come out of nowhere, right? These are our surface level thoughts, something that pops like our first kind of first impression kind of thing, right? But they come from something that our experiences in the past. They come from our culture. They come from some kind of learning that has happened over time. And so they are a reflection of certain kind of more fundamental core beliefs that we have about the world, the people, and other and events. And so when I asked my students about this picture, right, when I said, "What's a hospital?" So in the hospital, people go when they're sick, so there's something bad, there's something this person might have died, or maybe they are very sick, and they are comforting the people in front of the room, are comforting each other, right? But before we go any further, I would like to ask you one more thing around that picture. So try to come up with at least 3 other interpretations of what might be happening in the picture. If your first interpretation was negative, see if you can come up with a more positive one. If your first interpretation was positive, see if you can come up with something more negative. Okay, so I invite you, if you did the first 2 parts, I invite you to do this one as well. So write down 3 alternative explanations, either positive or negative, depending on what your first interpretation. For those of you who wrote alternative explanations, right? Alternative interpretations of this picture, different from your first impression, from your automatic thought. Was it easy or hard or somewhere in between? How much did you believe it, right? Because like we're just hypothetically coming up with different explanations. We're not saying that they're true, right? How much, you kind of are brainstorming, trying to write this, but it's not really your first impression. How much did you believe those things that you were writing? Did you believe them? They were all likely. Easy to think about that there. Okay, good. Hard to believe, exactly. Yeah, so so somebody found it hard to believe that, but then for some people it was easy, likely. Okay, good, excellent. All likely is or likely. Good. Okay. It was unlikely. So it really kind of depends. Okay, well, so this is an exercise to demonstrate those automatic thoughts, right? Our first impressions. Um, and so those are the first few thoughts and interpretations that show up in response to a situation. And they are typically a result of our past learning, our experiences, our cultural expectations. There's all kinds of different factors that go into our automatic thoughts. And they are, I call them mental shortcuts, right? Because basically, when we are faced with something, with a stimulus, from the environment, anything, right? A picture, a situation. We kind of our brains have to make sense of it. They have to categorize it. They have to figure out how to respond to it. But we cannot possibly analyze every single thing, right? And think about the pros and the cons and all the possible explanations. So we take a shortcut. Our brains take a shortcut. And those automatic thoughts are those shortcuts, right? They are the way that we organize the world based on our previous experiences. So we all do it. We all have automatic thoughts. Um, and most of the time they're very useful. They help us act quickly, be more efficient in the world, and so on. Sometimes, though, those mental shortcuts can get us into a little bit of trouble because we might fall into certain unhelpful patterns of thinking, of taking those shortcuts, right? And we call those unhelpful mental shortcuts thinking traps, right? So it's something that we fall into. We're not even aware that we're doing that. And again, it's something that we all do. We all fall into those thinking traps. It's not something pathological. But it's helpful to know what they are because then we can, again, awareness, right? Once we're aware, then we can maybe do something about it. So I picked three of the kind of most common ones, the ones that I don't know I use the most in my work as a therapist. But there's a whole list of them. It's a longer list. But anyway, the one of them is called overgeneralization, and it's basically seeing a general negative pattern in one event, right? So a boss gives me a negative evaluation, and overgeneralization would be I am a terrible person. I am no good at anything, right? Kind of generalizing this event that's work related to my entire life, to my entire person. Some other examples include these things usually happen to me. I fail at most endeavors. So really kind of making those general attributions about ourselves. And those are negative attributions, general negative attributions about ourselves. So that's one of them. Another one is catastrophizing. That one is also very common. So I think that's something that happened or will be so bad that I will not be able to stand it. Another way of catastrophizing is always going to the worst case scenario, right? Always thinking about the worst case scenario that will happen. So one way to catastrophize is I will be kicked out of school if I fail this exam, right? I'm thinking about something that will happen, and kind of going to the worst case scenario, right? Maybe one that is not even likely to be kicked out of school just because you fail an exam. If I start renovations on this house, it will crumble down to the ground because it's so old, right? If I go to the doctor, surely she will find cancer and then I will die. Those might sound far-fetched, but people definitely have those catastrophizing thoughts. So those are some examples. And then all or nothing thinking. I see events, people in black and white, or I'm sorry, events or people in black and white categories. So being kind of like very going to the extremes with our interpretations, right? Nobody likes me. This was a complete waste of time. All people are bad, and so on and so forth. So these are some examples of what we call thinking traps. So certain mental shortcuts that we take that later might contribute to more negative emotions and might contribute to more stress, right? Um, so, so what do we do? This is somebody who who works in the office apparently, right? So I was in the office on Wednesday, gave my boss the report, watched her read it. Okay, so that was the event. The belief, the interpretation was that she is looking for errors. So my boss is looking for errors. She will criticize my work. Okay, and naturally, the consequence of those kinds of thoughts is, feeling nervous, feeling anxious, so increased stress, right? Muscle tension, sweatiness, as far as the physical sensations, and the urges was to want to leave, want to scream. Okay, that particular person had that reaction. And again, kind of going back to that kind of thesis, this emotion of feeling nervous, anxious was appropriate, made sense in response to this thought. Except, let's take a closer look at this thought, because maybe this is a thinking trap, right? She is looking for errors. She will criticize my work, right? So this person is thinking about something that might happen in the future, but maybe they're catastrophizing a little bit, right? Maybe it's an overly negative prediction of something that might happen. And somebody, I think in the chat, I saw negative predictions, right? When I asked about stressful events, and that's absolutely right. We often have a tendency to fall into that thinking trap of catastrophizing, making a negative prediction. Sometimes it makes us feel a little bit more prepared, right? That's how we feel emotionally, that maybe we're a little more prepared. However, it also contributes to a lot of negative emotions, right? And a lot of stress. So maybe we can do something about it. There are certain ways to get out of those thinking traps, right? So let's go through some of them. The first one is considering the objective evidence, and I have this judge here and all that, because this is the one for which we say we take our thoughts to court. Okay, so this particular person had the thought that the boss is looking for errors, and she will criticize my work, right? So I would ask them, well, what objective evidence do you have for this thought? And so it's important to think about like both the for and against. So this particular person might say, well, in the past, my boss has criticized my work. So there'll be evidence for, right, that the boss has done it before. And I might ask, well, how many times did that happen? And let's say they say twice. It happened twice that they criticize my work. Well, how many times did you submit your work to your boss? And they might say, well, I don't know, many, like 15 or something, right? So out of the 15 times, twice they were criticized. So it's still evidence for, right? Because the boss did criticize it. But it's a little bit, there's also a lot of other times when the work wasn't criticized. So I might keep digging, right? What other evidence do you have for this thought? I have been criticized by other people in the past. Okay. And let's say that's the end, right? So then I will ask, well, what evidence do you have against that thought? What are some things that happened in the past that maybe are not consistent with this thought, that she is looking for errors and that she will criticize you? And, this person might say that they also have done good reports, right? And were not criticized. In fact, and maybe the boss has praised the reports in the past, or said that they did a good job, or maybe they got good job evaluations, and so on and so forth. Remember that this consider the evidence. Here we only want objective evidence, right? So if somebody says, well, I feel like I'm not doing a good job, or if you think that to yourself, I feel like I'm not doing a good job, that's not objective evidence. That's just the way you feel, or really the way, that's another thought, really, right? So what is the objective evidence? What happened in the past, or what did somebody say to you in the past, and so on, that might support this thought and might disprove this thought. And I usually recommend that people write it down into columns, for and against. Okay, so if you look back at your, when you did your ABC model, okay, look back at that thought that you had. If it is if you think that it might be a thinking trap, see if you can then take this thought to court, okay, and see if you can find evidence for this thought and evidence against it. If there are some other thoughts where thinking traps might be showing up, some other things to ask would be, do I know for certain that this thought is true, or that this thing that I'm worried about is going to happen? Okay. So in the case of this example here, where the person was worried that the boss is looking for errors and that they will criticize the work. Well, does he know it for sure that that is what's going on? No, they don't know it for sure. That's their assumption, but the boss did not come out and tell them, I'm looking for errors, and I'm looking for a way to criticize you. That's just something that they assumed based on certain previous experiences. Could there be other explanations? Is it possible that the boss just wants to take some time to read the report, right? Is it possible that the boss is looking at the numbers, right? Or checking the checking if the information is correct, right? But not necessarily looking for errors just to criticize the person, just making sure that the work is done the way it's supposed to be done. Is my negative automatic thought driven by intense emotions? Okay, this is important to think about. When we experience intense emotions, the activation in our brain goes from the prefrontal cortex. Like prefrontal cortex is where we analyze things, where we plan, where we reason, where we think about the pros and cons, and it primarily concentrates in the limbic system, so kind of like deeper in the brain, there are fewer there's less communication between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system when we experience negative emotions. What that means basically is that it's harder for us to think when we are experiencing strong emotions, which I'm sure you have experienced before. And also, it's harder for us to think up alternative explanations. It's hard for us to think about, even like the most likely scenario. So it's possible that I am experiencing. So in this question, basically, they're getting at are the intense emotions potentially clouding the way you view the situation? Okay, yes or no? Okay. However, there are some times when it might be that the thing that we worry about is not clouded by emotions, and maybe there are some reasons to think that it might be true. So then some questions to ask yourself as well is, well, even if it were true that she is looking for errors to criticize me, could I live with it? Could I live with the fact that she criticizes me, right? And then how could I cope with it? So this is where we actually kind of go to the worst case scenario, but not so that we get very anxious over it. It's so that we can think about how we would handle it, how we would cope with that worst case scenario were it to happen. Because then that helps us actually be prepared, right? Instead of kind of obsessing about something, ruminating about something for extended period of time, we kind of think about solutions, right? What is it that I might do in this situation that is productive, that would be helpful for me if it actually were true? Okay. So in this case, for example, right, the automatic thought, my boss is looking for errors, she will criticize my work. What we want to do based on those questions is come up with a so-called more balanced thought, a thought that takes into account different possibilities other than just the automatic thought. And so the more balanced thought based on all the different questions and the evidence for and against might be something like, my boss is taking time to read the report. She may find some errors, but she will likely also find things that she likes in the report. And even if she critiques my work, she will probably also give me positive feedback. Okay. So it's not like an all positive alternative thought, right? More because it's not supposed to be a positive thought. It's supposed to be a more balanced thought. It's supposed to be one that takes into account one that's more realistic, right? Than our automatic thought that fell into a thinking trap. That makes sense. So so in this case, the person might still feel anxious, right? And maybe stressed, but maybe it will be a little less anxious and maybe a little bit less stressed. And that's kind of what we're going for here as well. How can we reduce that level of stress and anxiety? So coming up with this more balanced thought, what it is not. It is not thinking positively again, right? So it's not thinking the opposite, right? She will definitely not find any errors and she will definitely not criticize my work, because that wouldn't be very realistic, right? It's a possibility that she will find some errors, and it's a possibility that she will give me some feedback that may be more negative. So we're not going for reversing the thought or thinking something that's completely opposite to our negative automatic thought. But what we're going for is considering all the different possibilities so we can come up with a more realistic thought. It is not a quick fix. So what I mean by that is that, sometimes you will come up with a more balanced thought and you will say, well, that's just not right. That doesn't feel right. I don't believe it. Kind of like with that picture, right, at the hospital, the picture that I showed you. For some people, it was easy to come up with alternative explanations and easy to believe them. But for others, it wasn't that easy to believe, right? It was harder to come up with alternative explanations and harder to believe them. And it's the same with those automatic thoughts, and the same with the more balanced thoughts that we come up with. So it takes time, it takes practice, and it also takes some evidence from the real world, right? So let's say, going back to our example, the person came up with a more balanced thought that the boss will probably might critique my work, but they will probably be happy with something else in the report, and that ultimately will not be as bad, right? So that was the more balanced thought. So then what will be really helpful is getting some evidence from the real world, right? So I wonder what happens actually with the report, right? Did the boss give him any critique, or did the boss praise the report, or whatever, right? But it takes time, and it takes some collecting evidence that supports the more balanced thought before we start truly believing them. And it is not a panacea, right? Because somebody said here, right, my thought was not a thinking trap, and you're right. Sometimes we may not be in a thinking trap. Sometimes our thoughts are, or a lot of times our thoughts are accurate, right? And so what do we do then? Well, then we may use some other techniques to deal with stress, right? Like mindfulness, like some acceptance-based strategies, like self-compassion that we'll talk about in just a minute. So, so if it's not a thinking trap, then you don't have to necessarily treat it as a thinking trap, right? Because we don't necessarily always fall into thinking traps. But this is just something to give you because most likely, you know, we all have certain kind of less helpful patterns of thinking, and so it's good to take a closer look. Okay, so just to summarize, what happens to us, how we think about it, how we feel, and what we do are all interconnected. And that's the gist of the cognitive behavioral theory, cognitive behavioral model. And we can learn to observe and pay closer attention to those interrelationships and to identify certain patterns of thinking and behaving. Sometimes our minds fall into unhelpful patterns of interpreting the events, and we call those automatic thoughts. And well, automatic thoughts is something that we kind of all have and we all do, and sometimes those automatic thoughts fall into thinking traps.
We'll now move to the second part of the workshop. My name is Maryla Sokolowska. I'm very happy to be here and to share with you my experience with self-compassion. So, as you probably know, and you experience every day, we are living in a quite demanding world. What does it mean? We face a lot of demandings around us, and it is because we, in our mental functioning, we somehow connect to two important spheres of our life, so nature and culture. And sometimes the culture creates some demandings that are very, very hard to fulfill when we are just human beings led somehow by nature. For example, our culture, especially when of course, my culture is a little bit probably different from yours. So maybe in your culture, the examples will be different. But it is common to think that one of the demandings that we face is how we behave or how we fulfill our social roles. For example, there is certain image of how mothers should, whatever it means, behave towards their children, or what does it mean to be a good boss, what does it mean to be an excellent student, how we act when we go to the hospital, for example. And even though all those situations are very complex, all those rules are not very easy to follow, the culture somehow demands us to do perfect whatever we do. And of course, it has a huge impact on our functioning. Another example is that most of the Western culture expects our body to be absolutely wonderful, absolutely perfect, always healthy, and never with any kind of disability. And we, of course, know that this is not true about all of us. And in my opinion, it is also not very true about most of us. So it's very hard to somehow face this. And this demanding world also can be connected with what we experienced when we were very, very young. So from our Personal experience, from our family experience, we can also learn some demanding rules of how to behave and how to live in this world. For example, if we have the very demanding parents, they create a lot of expectations, and they show it or tell it to their kids. And this kid, for example, is listening all the time that you should do better, or you could do this and this in a different way, or you somehow disappoint me, and so on. And this kid grows up hearing all these things, and this kid somehow takes inside or incorporates what he or she heard when was very, very young from their parents, from other people who were important, and also from the culture. For example, school can be very demanding. So all those experiences from the past, they grow inside with this child, and it has a direct impact on what is he or she thinking about himself or herself. And when this internal voice is very demanding, very critical, we can say that our inner critic is born. And who is the inner critic? So inner critic is a, let's say, person who is built on our critical experiences in our past, especially when we were younger. And it is, of course, a kind of complex of feeling and thinking. And it is described very broadly in schema therapy, which is a deep therapy for very complex situations. And it has very beautiful description of what are the types of inner critics. So the one kind of inner critic is a demanding critic. So as you might guess, it forces the individual to be the best, to always be perfect and never make mistakes. And of course, any failures are not they are like when you, for example, fail in something or you make a mistake, it creates a lot of very, very unpleasant sensations in your body and in your emotions, and also creates a lot of very hurtful feelings. And this demanding critic can like develop from the comparisons we make to each other, and also it always makes us feel that we are not doing enough good. So we are taking other standards as our own. For example, when we hear, "Oh, you should be like better parent," we are not thinking if we are really a good parent or not, but we just take it as it was said by, for example, other person, and we try to be better. So I would like to ask you, what kind of feelings will this demanding critic mostly create in when we, for example, hear those voices, or we unfortunately hear them in our brains? When we experience it, as you said, we feel that we are basically not good enough, and we start to feel a lot of shame. There is also another, the guilt-inducing critic. So this is a very, very dark place, because it is based on experience when you need to give more than you want. So basically the inner critic, which is creating guilt in you, expects from you that you will always prioritize others' needs over your own. So basically you need to give more than you want, sometimes even more than you have already. And what is like doing what it is the best for the individual is that, for example, you need to give up your dreams, you need to give up your needs, you should forget about your own goals, according to this critic, because others need you. And when you, for example, act in a very healthy way, so you prioritize your own needs, or you somehow make your needs, emotions, goals the most important for you, which is very healthy. The inner critic, which is conducting you guilt, says that you are selfish, that you should not do it. And also it creates a lot of unpleasant stuff. And in this case, also, if you can write for me, what do you think that the person who all the time gives more than they want, how do they feel? Attitude in ourselves. And there's also the third one. And it is very concentrated on punishing us, because it basically devaluates everything you do, and all its energy is like concentrated on what we do wrong, and whatever small mistakes we do, it makes us feel that we should be punished. And this is very deep stuff, all those types of critics. But this one also can make us feel hatred to ourselves. And of course, it is very, very unpleasant and very, very hard to feel. But also, when you experience this punitive critic, you can experience a lot of other stuff. And this time also, I would like to write what else, except the self-hatred, you can feel after being punished by the inner critic. We went through 3 types of different inner critics. And all the emotions I mentioned, and you of course mentioned, they are unpleasant. So basically, there is this popular but not very supportive myth in the society that when we criticize ourselves, we will do better. But the problem is that we didn't mention any positive emotions so far. And all the emotions we mentioned before already, they are very unpleasant to feel. And it is very hard to motivate ourselves while we experience very unpleasant emotions. And when we always feel that we are not good enough, that we hate ourselves, and also that we need to sacrifice all we have for others, even if we don't want to. This is what we like. The question is what we can do when our inner critic is too intensive. What we can do when the thoughts in our brains are very, very hard, and we don't have any motivation to do any change. And also when how to deal with all those difficult emotions, because this is not very easy. At least in Poland, the kids are not very often taught how to deal with difficult emotions, especially when they are created or based on their own critical voices in their heads. So you can see this picture with the owl, and this is just a preview of the short video I will show you.
You should do better. You're lazy and stupid. You really can't do anything right, can you? You're a total loser. You're not even a good person. And you're so boring. Remember the time when Joy couldn't find your cell phone? You knew where it was, you filthy thief. Nobody likes you. Your friends don't even want to hang out with you. Joy only feels sorry for you. You're fat and ugly and disgusting. Look at yourself. You're not like everyone else. You're rotten. You never do anything right. You must try harder, otherwise you're a nobody. Worthless. 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 Worthless.
Hello? Hello? Hey, I can tell you're struggling and that you're disappointed with yourself, but I'm here to help you. You're not alone. No wonder you're feeling bad with him hanging over you. The critical part of ourselves can be so unkind when things go wrong.
Don't listen to her. You know you're just weak.
Don't talk to my friend like that. It's so painful to be sad.
Yeah. What he says makes me feel small. And so alone.
Then tell him.
You make me feel lonely and ashamed of who I am. It hurts too much.
He can't stand the light. I think it helps if we can see him.
Leave me alone. Stop tormenting me. Hey, I'm angry at you for always putting me down.
Yes. And what do you need to feel better?
I need you to stop bullying me like this. I need you to support me.
I didn't mean it like that. I was only trying to protect you, to make sure you don't make a fool out of yourself. I didn't mean to torment or hurt you. I'm just trying to keep you on your toes so you don't fail.
But it's not helpful. I need for you to tell me when I actually do something bad or really need to pull myself together. Not to criticize everything all the time.
Look, I understand that you get very anxious and worried when Alfred makes mistakes. We can help you too, so you don't have to be so mean.
Are you coming or what?
Sorry.
Are you feeling down? Approach your vulnerable emotions rather than avoiding them. Invite a person with whom you feel safe into your dark place and show your vulnerability. Ask your painful feelings what they need to feel better. Tell yourself that you deserve to have those needs met. Self-assertive anger and self-compassion are antidotes to the shame caused by our harsh inner critic. Remember, acknowledging vulnerability is showing strength.
So that was basically a short video about how to deal with inner critic. And what is important for our next, let's say, hour, it is the white owl. Because as you could see, this brown owl, Alfred, had a very, very huge inner critic. He was a mix of three, I guess, of all those mentioned before. And as you can see, it seems to be much bigger than Alfred himself. And probably Alfred before had a lot of unpleasant experience. He was criticized a lot, and that's why this inner critic was so big. But the white owl, when it appears, it seems to be like a good parent or a very supportive friend. So the white owl symbolizes someone who introduces us to self-compassion. And when we experience enough of care enough of understanding and enough of this, like kind words when we are suffering, when we make mistakes, when we feel down, and our needs and our emotions are seen by someone, and also they are understood, they are normalized, that yes, everyone suffers sometimes, like in the song, yes, everybody hurts sometimes. Then we have the opportunity to learn the alternative for the inner critic. And what is very interesting is that the inner critic is always made. So it means that there is no child who was born with the inner critic, but we are all born with compassion inside us. Because this is a part of our evolutionary heritage that we get from our ancestors. Because some of the evolutional theories, they say that it is not only that the strongest will survive, but also the kindest. And this is what the white owl did for Alfred, was seeing his emotions, seeing that he is suffering, and helping him to develop compassion, to activate, actually not develop, but activate the compassion inside him. So this is just the beginning of what is the self-compassion, and I will show you the definition just to understand it. So the science defines self-compassion because it involves being touched and open to one's own suffering. So we basically need to be aware that we are suffering, and then we should be open to it. We shouldn't avoid it or disconnect from it, because we need to feel something. We need to really we shouldn't be indifferent to our suffering, because that way, well, it doesn't lead to compassion. We need to be open and connected to what is going on. And then we generate the desire to alleviate one's suffering and to heal oneself with kindness. So basically, as you can see, self-compassion is a kind of motivation. And it is very, very important because it is an active stuff. When we are compassionate, it is all this process is focused on action, on doing stuff to help, to heal the suffering inside us. Self-compassion also involves this non-judgmental understanding of our own pain. And it also helps us to understand why we fail, why we do mistakes, and also it is connected with this thinking that when we suffer, we are not alone, because we sometimes have this tendency to hide away when we are suffering, or to isolate ourselves from others, and the science so far showed that this is very, very unhelpful. And there is a wonderful research on self-compassion by Kristin Neff, and she created this model of self-compassion, which involves three components. First is self-kindness. So as you can see, it is very mood and emotion connected construct, the self-compassion. And self-kindness is exactly this feeling of being surrounded with something kind, with being cared, with approaching our own selves as our best friends. So being your own best friend and being kind to ourselves just calms us down, and also heals what is very, very difficult to feel in us. The next component is mindfulness. So this part of noticing and being aware that, for example, we suffer, and also what is going on in our bodies, in our emotions, in our thoughts. And this is basically the ABC model. The components of ABC model you saw before. All you can notice the thoughts, the body sensations, the behaviors, and the emotions. You can approach to them mindfully. So just let them be how they are. You don't need to change anything, just observe. And this observing is very important because it should be non-judgmental, and you should observe yourself with some kind of curiosity, because also what we feel, what we thought about the stuff, or how we behave, it can be observed. And when we observe from this curious and open approach, then we can change it. And also, as I mentioned before, there is this third component of common humanity. So this feeling that we are not alone. And also that probably on somewhere in words there is someone who is suffering from a very similar situation that we are suffering at the same time. That yes, there are people who are also ill. There are people who have problems in the relationships. There are people who are stressing about work, and there are also people who experience a lot of very complex problems, because this is part of the humanity. And this feeling of not being alone, it also gives us courage to change the situation. So basically, those three components of self-compassion, they help us to notice, to be kind, and also to change the situation, so heal the pain or suffering. And there are some constructs or words in society that might be mistaken with self-compassion. And for example, some people might say that being self-compassionate is being feeling this self-pity. It is not true, because as I said before, self-compassion is very active. We need to do something. We cannot just stop on noticing our suffering and not do anything about it. It is also not egoistic or narcissistic attitude, because sometimes being compassionate to ourselves is also stop doing the things that are hurtful for ourselves or for other people. And it is very important, because compassion itself, it is like creating a safe space where you can observe with kindness and curiosity the situation. You can you are not indifferent for this, and you can make a first small step to change the situation for the better. It is also not self-indulgence. So you basically you're active. That's another part of it. And what is very interesting, self-compassion is also not empathy, because self-compassion, as I said, is a motivation, and it is connected with the with doing, with changing the behavior. And empathy is simply feeling as other people, but it is not always connected with the action. So those are they look almost alike, but from the theoretical point of view and also from the practical, they are very different. And this is the end of the theoretical part. And I would like to invite you for the few exercises which practically show you how to cultivate the self-compassion. And the first thing I want you to do is to think about some situation which happened to you recently. And the situation probably might not be very pleasant, and you probably felt like criticizing yourself about it. You feel ashamed, or you are angry at yourself. So it was connected with some of those unpleasant emotions we listed while talking about the inner critic. And when you will be ready, imagine the situation in details. And what is important, it shouldn't be very, extreme situation. When we think about the level of, let's say, stress, shame, feeling of guilt or other unpleasant emotions, it should be from 0, so non-emotions, 10 extreme. So it should be about 3 or 4 level. So somewhere in the middle or a little bit less. And when you have this situation, you have imagined already what happened, who was involved, how did the situation look like. Also remember to feel how you felt about it. And what were your thoughts? And later, when you describe it, change the perspective. So imagine that it is not you who are involved in the situation. It didn't happen to you, but to your best friend. And see or imagine how they could comment this situation. What kind of words would they use? And of course, you don't need to share it with anyone. I mean, this is a private stuff. But see if there is any difference. I would like to show you the professional meditation by Kristin Neff, so the researcher who did the worldwide research on self-compassion. And she created a guided meditation with using the self-compassion components of self-kindness, mindfulness, and common humanity. And what is the most important? You can follow the lecture when she guides the meditation. Of course, you don't need to. Only if you want, you can try it. You can close your eyes or you can have them open. Just let the sight, stop in a very comfortable position if it's okay for you. And also, you can sit in a position that is very comfortable for you, because this will take about 5 minutes to listen.
And it's something you can do anytime during the day or at night when you need a little self-compassion. So to practice this exercise, we actually need to call up a little suffering. So I'd invite you to think about a situation in your life right now that is difficult for you. Maybe you're feeling stress, or you're having a relationship problem, or you're worried about something that might happen. I'd invite you to think of something that is difficult, but not overwhelmingly difficult, especially if you're new to practicing the self-compassion break. So finding a situation and getting in touch with it. What's going on? What happened? Or what might happen? Who said what? Really bring the situation to life in your mind's eye. And then I'm going to be saying a series of phrases that are designed to help us remember the 3 components of self-compassion when we need it most. So the first phrase is, this is a moment of suffering. Right? We're bringing mindful awareness to the fact that suffering is present. And I'd invite you to find some language that speaks to you. Something like, this is really hard right now. Or, I'm really struggling. We're actually turning toward our difficulty, acknowledging it, naming it. This is a moment of suffering. The second phrase is, suffering is a part of life. Okay, we're reminding ourselves of our common humanity. Suffering is a part of life. And again, finding language that speaks to you. It may be something like, it's not abnormal to feel this way. Many people are going through similar situations. Right? The degree of suffering may be different. The flavor of suffering may be different. that suffering is a part of life, part of being human. And then the third phrase is, may I be kind to myself in this moment. And to support bringing kindness to yourself, I'd invite you to perhaps put your hands over your heart or some other place on your body that feels soothing and comforting. Feeling the warmth of your hands, the gentle touch. Letting those feelings of care stream through your fingers. May I be kind to myself. And using any language that supports that sense of kindness. Perhaps language you would use with a good friend you cared about who was going through a very similar situation. You know, it may be something like, I'm here for you. It's going to be okay. I care about you. You can even try using a diminutive if that feels comfortable. You know, oh darling, I'm so sorry. Or you can try calling yourself by your first name. Anything that feels natural to express your deep wish that you be well and happy and free from suffering. And then letting go of the practice and noticing how your body feels right now. Allowing any sensations to be just as they are. Allowing yourself to be just as you are in this moment.
So basically that was the kind of formal meditation. As you could see, the lecture addressed the three components of self-compassion. And as you probably noticed, it was quite short. Because self-compassion, except the fact that this is the kind of inner resource that we are born with, it is also a skill we can learn. And sometimes people say, but this is so hard to focus during the 5 minutes of meditation, or it is so new to me to hear all those compassionate sentences, all those kind words, that I'm not able to do it. And yes, it happens sometimes. And what we can do is to practice. And that's why I showed you this 5 minutes of meditation, not 25, for example, because at the beginning it is hard. And especially when we had a lot of unpleasant experiences in our life, we were criticized a lot. It is very hard to listen to all these nice words, and even sometimes it is people are not able to do it. And this is a kind of place where we can think, why is it like this? And ask ourselves the question, if we want to try do it in this alternative way, which is the self-compassion way. And I'm very curious, and of course, only if you want, you can share it. We have something which is called informal practice. And it is basically everything which is not listening to the guided meditation or reading the guided meditation in the book, or just sitting and meditating or imagining things. Because sometimes we need this short, quick actions in our head, like, short, passionate, kind words just before the exam. Or we are having the job interview, we need, inner cheerleader inside us to give us motivation to, open the door and start the job interview. Or we are very sad and we don't have time to sit in a formal meditation, to have those 5, 2 or 25 minutes to start it or to do it. And that's why we have this informal practice. I remember when I did the course of self-compassion, and the teacher told us that we can practice self-compassion while we are taking the bath. So basically, we were doing the normal hygienic routine, which we do every day. But we are, for example, putting the soap on our bodies with the thoughts, I'm taking care of myself. Or we are putting the face cream on our faces and looking at ourselves in the mirrors with love and kindness, and repeating the words which were suitable for our emotions. For example, I'm crossing my fingers for you today, like me talking to myself. Or I hope that you have a nice day today. Or I see that you are sad today, so I'm with you. And you can basically make the informal practice out of everything. You can, for example, eat the compassionate dinner. So with every spoon of soup, let's say, you think that I'm doing it because I want to be healthy and I'm taking care of myself. Or when you feel very bad, you feel that your emotions are overwhelming, you are in a difficult situation, you can just physically hug yourself, because we are connected with our bodies and our emotions are very, very close to the body. So when we just put our hand where we have the heart, or we can embrace ourselves, we can just physically feel this in our bodies. It activates the different parts of our brain which are connected with the soothing system. So basically, informal practice is the place where you can get creative, because in self-compassion approach, we also have this like background that you are an expert of yourself. You know yourself. You have lived your life being yourself for many years, and that means that you experienced a lot. You know what calms you down. You know what helps you. You know what it is not helpful. You know what kind of experience you have and what kind of experience are still to be uncovered. And sometimes we find it very difficult to create this informal practice because this is, let's say, upper level than the formal practice. You need to learn how to be compassionate with the good teacher, and later you can create your own practice. So when you need something short, you can change the perspective, like in this first exercise with the friend. Yes, what my best friend would say about it. And then maybe these words or some other words will be helpful for you. Or you can take a short formal practice if it's helpful. And basically, the informal practice should be fun, should be healing, and should be whatever you find for yourself the best. But of course, it cannot involve any, let's say, substances that change your mood. And that's the only thing that you need to remember, that you should like quickly and in a long term feel better. And it should involve all those three components of being kind to yourself, being understanding, not judgmental, being mindful towards what you feel, what you think about the situation, how you feel in your body, and what you usually do. And just to make this wish in your heart, or to have this motivation to change the situation, to ask yourself, what do I need in this situation, in this particular time when I feel suffering? And then when you know the answer, what do you need, or what you want to try if helps you, then you involve in the action. And that's why we have the informal practice. And some people say that this is very, very difficult to hear the compassionate language. And it is important because we are not very used to it. And also when we listen to these formal meditations, we read the books, we, I don't know, involve in some compassionate training. It can happen that you feel that this language is not really for you. That it is too poetical, or it doesn't suit your own language which you use every day, or those words are not very helpful because, for example, you have different level of sensitivity. You need something stronger, you need something which is more like everyday language, and it is okay. And the most important part is to create your own compassionate language. Because the self-compassion, as you can see in this word, it is about yourself. So you know what is the best for you, and use the language that, you know, like that you believe in it. Because when, for example, we hear this loving kindness meditation, so all those sentences from Christine Neff when she said, may I be kind to myself, or may I be patient, it can be something that is too heavy for you, or too out of your normal order. So I would like you to try to create your own compassionate language. So there are 2 steps. First thing you need to do is noticing your discomfort or suffering. And if you remember, there was this part in what Professor Stojek said before about the wheel of emotions. So basically, you can use it to name your emotion. For example, this is sadness, or I notice fear, or there is feeling of hopelessness inside me. So you can use whatever language you prefer. If you feel like it works better when you use your own national language, your mother tongue, it probably works better for you. But for this example, I use English. So basically, you name the emotion. Yes, you. And what is the most important? Sometimes in English and also in Polish, we say, I am sad, or I'm angry. And in the practice of self-compassion, we avoid this because it creates this attitude that that we are our emotions. And it is basically not true. Of course, emotions are very important parts of who we are, but it is not, 100% of who we are. So to create this space between of who we are as people who can observe their own thoughts and emotions, I would not recommend using that I am and then at your emotional state. Just to use one of those or create your own, which just makes this small space. So as I said before, this is, and the name of the emotion, I notice this and that. There is some emotions inside me. And you can, to create this feeling that it has some beginning and some end, I mean the emotion, because it's always true, emotions change. You can add to this sentence, for example, now there is sadness inside me, or here and now I feel this and that. Or you can add in this moment if you want. And this is the step number 1. And later you add being kind. So the most important question is, what do I need now when I feel this emotion I feel, or this discomfort or suffering? And add this kind reminder to your compassionate sentence. So basically, this is the moment of unpleasant emotion. I want to remember about this and that, or I want to remember to be, let's say, compassionate towards myself. And just to have a few examples, you can say, this is a moment of sadness. Let me be kind towards myself. Or, I notice fear inside me. I want to remember that I'm not alone in this situation. And those are examples I made for you. But as I said, your own compassionate language should stand for you. So it should be like it should suit you. And this is just the example of what you can create your own language, like the base for this. But you don't need to use those particular sentences. You can use your own. And if you want, you can write it now, of course, private. You don't need to share it with anyone if you don't want to. And I will show you only the last slide with the resources we used for this presentation, where you can find more information. So the first book is Mind Over the Mood, which is the base of the ABC model and a very user-friendly guide to cognitive behavioral therapy. And also from the same or very similar point of view, the book Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life by Stephen Hayes. So those are, and also the United Protocol for the Transdiagnostic Treatment of Emotional Disorders. It is, those three are based on cognitive behavioral therapy, so this most classical approach to the thoughts and behavior, and also the emotions and body sensation. And the Reality Slap and the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook are, of course, books which extend the knowledge about the self-compassion. And also there are two links, as you can see. The first one is the research and practice website, where you can find the articles about self-compassion and also the guided meditations. And they are all for free to listen. They are prepared by the Christine Neff, so the word specialist from self-compassion. And also there is a YouTube channel linked, which is led by Chris Germer, who is also the co-worker of Christine Neff. So they both create this self-compassion scientific base. And Chris Germer also has on his YouTube guided meditations. They are longer and shorter. It depends on what you like, and of course it depends on your level of practice with the self-compassion. And those resources we basically use with our patient when we practice the cognitive behavioral therapy and self-compassion with our clients in our offices when we help them to deal with what they think, and it is sometimes very difficult how they behave and what they feel and how they can challenge their inner critics. So I will come back to the slide with the questions. And of course, thank you for the attention. Thank you for being here during our workshop. And I want to encourage you to ask questions for me about the self-compassion part, and also later about the whole workshop about the cognitive behavioral therapy too, of course.